right, welcome to the Gould-Fish Pod. I am Matt Gould.
I'm Ryan Fish.
And we've got a little bit of a different format for you here this week. Obviously, big Revolution pay-per-view that we've got to go over. So we're not going to spend too much time on Dynamite and Rampage, mainly just going over some of the things that were important for the pay-per-view. So before we get to Dynamite, we've actually got a couple of newsworthy things to talk about. The first
announced a huge announcement. You know,
huge,
you gotta.
It is a huge.
That has to be announced.
Yes. Actually, before we get to any huge announcements, I actually have to make note that Vince McMahon did his first live interview in 15 years today, which is an astounding number if you really think
that's
about
incredible.
It. Guy hates everybody, doesn't want to do interviews ever. And if Pat McAfee weren't on his payroll, I doubt he would be doing this interview either.
He definitely would not show up.
No, not a chance at all. But I thought that it was kind of fun to listen to some of the quotes because some of them are just total nonsense. And so I have a couple of tweets summarizing this to pull up. And I'm just going to read some of the quotes. Before I read the quotes, Vince McMahon offered Pat McAfee a match at WrestleMania.
Oh, wow.
He asked Pat if he wanted to wrestle at WrestleMania. Pat said that would be a fucking dream come true. And Vince said, all right, I'll find you an opponent. Just like that.
That's all it took. You didn't have to do anything special to get it?
No. Biggest show of the year. Pat, would you like to wrestle on it? Of course I would. That's it. But anyway, as for the quotes, let's talk about some quotes. So Pat McAfee at one point was referencing a lot of the buzz that WWE gets on social media, and he asked if he heard the noise. He said, Vince, do you hear the noise? And Vince, in an all-time classic response, says, nope, because if you listen to the positives, you have to listen to the negatives. If people think you're an asshole, you can't change that. Oh, God. Yeah, if you don't try and change that perception, it is pretty hard to change. I agree with him there.
You can only make one first impression.
Yeah, and he made it 30 plus years ago, and he's good with it. Pat also asked him about why they changed from the WWF to the WWE back in the early to mid 2000s, which we'll get into why this is total bullshit in a second. But Vince's response was, there has always been wrestling. I wanted to separate us from everybody else. And this is just not true at all. The reason he had to change the name is because the World Wildlife Foundation sued the WWE for using their logo, or not the logo, but using the same abbreviation as them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, look, you can't use that. And if you continue to use it, we're going to sue you. Vince thought they were kidding and continued to use it anyway. And then eventually they were going to sue them when they did this whole marketing campaign called Get the F Out. And the entire purpose of it was, we're going to take the F out of WWF and replace it with E. And the idea all these years later, this isn't the reason why they had to change it in the first place, but it's the story they'll tell you today, is that they needed to differentiate between being a wrestling federation. We're entertainment. That's what we are. And so that's why he claims that they changed the WWE, or from WWF to WWE, but it's the biggest crock of shit ever. Yeah. It's funny how if you got a guy on your actual payroll, how the narrative is controlled. God bless Pat McAfee. I love him, but I wonder how much of this he's eating up as somebody who is probably detached from the inner sanctum of wrestling for many years, I'm sure. Another piece of news information is that Vince said he is going to be inducting The Undertaker into the Hall of Fame, which I don't know that Vince has ever inducted anybody into the Hall of Fame, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice, especially for like an Undertaker, like kind of a generational talent, to get that one special treatment too. Because isn't he the only one going in this class as well? Yeah,
I believe that's correct. It's a special Undertaker Hall of Fame.
So that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And, the guy who plays the Undertaker, he's got all sorts of interesting takes about the world, but that doesn't take away from how legendary. I mean, there were years where WrestleMania was only as good as whoever was wrestling the Undertaker to try and beat the streak. And the rest of the show was nothing to write home about. WrestleMania. And people basically bought it to see if the
streak.
Undertaker streak.
Yes, the streak.
You're going to love this quote. This was Vince McMahon chatting about the Monday Night Wars. Pat McAfee asked him a question, and this was just about competing with WCW, and Vince's response was, you're going to love this. I'm probably one of the few people in the world who enjoys confrontation. I learned as a kid that if I live through the beating, I win, and I'm just wired differently.
He's built different.
The other thing that he said, he actually touched on the WWE cuts, and now he kind of tiptoed around the fact that it was, the fact that people were being cut, but he actually said that it's not personal. It's just sometimes in business you have dead weight and you've got to get rid of it.
Oh no, he did not.
Yep, that's what he said.
That's tough. That's a tough look.
And then the next one was that they were talking about him running WWE at his age, and it's not a secret that Vince McMahon is old. And Vince McMahon, this is another quote from him. If I get hit by a bus today, I just want 1 second before I kick it to say thank you for everything. So that's some of the highlights from the interview. So many hilarious things that are just factually not true, and like Pat McAfee eating it up, just loving every second of what he was doing. Oh, this is the best one. I almost missed this one at the end here, but there was a instance where Vince McMahon was trying to do a run in, like actually run into a match.
Oh, gee.
And I forget the circumstances surrounding this.
Oh, where he blew out his quads? Is that the one?
Yes.
So that was with the Batista John Cena where they threw each other out.
Yes. And so Pat asked him about that. He said, so you blew out your quads running to the ring, right? And Vince said, not too many people can sever both of their quadricep tendons at the same time. It takes talent.
Takes talent. That it does.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. It's a different kind of talent, but he's already established that he's built different. So
built different.
Built different. Hashtag Vince McMahon built different. But those were some of the funny highlights that I saw just scrolling through Twitter today. I don't know. I might go and watch the whole interview. I only saw bits and pieces of it, but I don't know. Any interview with Vince is as much smoke and mirrors as it is real information. At that point, you're just watching it for the entertainment value.
Right. Yeah, because the only clip I saw on Twitter of Pat McAfee was when they asked about Michael Cole, and Vince McMahon just said, "Oh, he's like an awful guy."
Yeah, and Pat also, I don't think in storyline is the biggest Michael Cole fan either, and so I think it was just like a funny bonding.
Right, and he got up and was like all like happy. He's like, "Yeah, like absolutely," like stuff like that.
But that's most of the wrestling news that we were going to get into. I mean, there's tons of stuff going on, but it's a big week, so we're trying to keep it condensed as much as we can. So what we will do now is we'll move on to Dynamite, which this was a phenomenal show. Before we go and do some quick hits, Fish, what did you think of the show overall?
That was very good, honestly. Nothing to complain about. I mean, to me, like I got to see all the people that I want to see wrestle. Really nice to see Christopher Daniels back.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was great. All the promos were really good.
Promos were outstanding.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, top to bottom, depth-wise, very good. And I still think one of the funnier ones is still, with Keith Lee and Ricky Starks. That's always a good one. But yes, overall, everything was clicking, and it was great.
So we're not going to do the normal run through of the entire show that we normally do. The point of the show was obvious. It was to build everything that they've got going for Revolution, and they did that pretty effectively. So Fish and I are just going to take you through some of our favorite parts. But before we dive into the meat of the show, it was the announcement everyone's been waiting for and everyone had been speculating about. And I am proud to say that I appropriately predicted it just hours before the show. Of course, these are sealed away text messages between me and Big Dave, so they're not for public consumption. However, I promise you, just hours before Dynamite, I texted Big Dave and said, I just have this feeling that he bought more than a tape library. And I was right. The big announcement right to begin the show, Tony Khan and his big beady eyes, sounding like he's going to run out of breath every second he talks in front of the live crowd.
He is overhyped for himself.
He's so hyped. He is so hyped. But the big announcement was that Tony Khan is the new owner of Ring of Honor. He has officially purchased it. What are your initial reactions to that?
I thought it was actually like, because I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. I wasn't sure if he because I was leaning towards the way of he bought the library, like you had, like we had talked about. So like I wasn't sure, but like him buying it all, I mean, that's definitely a huge step. And when we kind of talked about it, was the not going to be like the third brand, and I like that. So like as a overall like reaction, like I thought it was pretty good. So.
And that was my reaction to all of it. I immediately started thinking of all of the stuff that they could do with it, like recreating an invasion angle that actually works. However, I listened to Wrestling Observer Radio, and Dave Meltzer immediately ruined all of my hopes and dreams because he had mentioned that at every single point in wrestling history, any company that has bought another company and attempted to run it independently, meaning that it's going to retain its name, it's going to retain a lot of the talent, it's going to run as its own thing, maybe the two companies will compete. Every instance in wrestling history where that has been the idea, the second promotion has ended up being a non-profitable venture, and it has eventually just been converted over to the more popular brand. So I hope that doesn't happen, because I think there's a lot of things that you can do on the table. But there was talks that Ring of Honor could be the official developmental brand of AEW, where occasionally you can throw some of the big names over there to do some big programs and hopefully keep it somewhat alive. Unfortunately, it's not the Ring of Honor it used to be. That doesn't mean that it can't once again be that. But I was bummed when I heard that news, because I still think that there's a chance they could do something to salvage that name along the way.
And they have that super card coming up too.
I think that's a really good opportunity to do something big, to make it more, even if it is just going to be a developmental brand. I think there's got to be a reason for people to watch. And I think there needs to be big time AEW crossover at that show, which there should be. Now that he owns
we might get the FTR Briscoes.
The Briscoes tweeted out immediately. Now, just keep in mind, none of the ROH talent knew that this was what was happening. Wow. They all found out in real time. So the Briscoes immediately tweeted out, "Good shit, Tony. When do we get to wrestle FTR?" So they're just as hyped for it as you and I.
And then hopefully, I just thought about this, is that Andrade and Roosh can bring the faction back. Yeah, bring the faction back.
Whatever his name is now. That would be great. That's what Andrade wanted. So hopefully he kicks everybody out of the Andrade Hardy family office and replaces them with his family.
That'd be dope.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for what's to come with Ring of Honor. But that's more to be seen.
It's massive news. Absolutely, though.
It is huge news. I mean, it really is. It's exactly what he advertised. And, the hype beast sometimes runs into a corner. This time he appropriately hyped it for sure.
My prediction was that his announcement, the huge announcement, was going to be announced on Rampage. That was
that would have been career suicide.
Oh man.
But it's time to go into the actual Dynamite show, which piggybacked off of the Ring of Honor announcement. And the reason we're going to focus on this at the beginning here is because I loved the Bryan Danielson Christopher Daniels match. And they made a point to say that these two guys were two of the guys in the very first ever main event for an ROH show in history. There was a third guy in it, low key, and that's who won the match. But these two wrestled as if to pay homage to the two originals from Ring of Honor. And I thought it was outstanding. Christopher Daniels has been wrestling for a couple months now, but he went away for a while as far as AEW goes. And God damn it, at 51, this guy came back and he gave Dustin Rhodes a run for his money as far as being the best wrestler in his 50s goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, moving was incredible. His agility and just overall was just it honestly like was like he never stopped wrestling or like went away, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Where
Oh yeah.
it's like he literally was like on the show last week, like that. He just felt like that in sync.
Yeah, and he was very over, and I don't know. I just watched these two guys wrestle, and the thought that it keeps going into my mind is that if all of this were real, and this was just a different combat style, but it was real, the match that these guys had is about how I would imagine something like that would go.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
And there's just a different level of greatness when it comes to those two guys having been around forever.
Yeah, there was a certain standard that they were kind of like held up to, you know, especially kind of, you know, going in and Tony giving the little history lesson of like these two, you know, being part of the first main event, and they definitely exceeded those expectations and standards.
All these years later. There was a backstage thing with Sting and Darby hyping up some of their feuds and the TNT title match on Rampage. But the next match is the Battle Royal, where Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks last eliminated Darius Martin, who made his return 1 year to the day that he had gotten injured, or at least the last time he had appeared on TV. And I do have one thing to nitpick here, and it's not really that big of a deal, but it is kind of silly. Did they announce the rules to this match at any point?
I don't recall. The only thing I remember them like saying a lot was that like FTR and Top Flight were the first in, like two in, and they were going that deep. That's the only part where I remember.
Yeah, so I assumed this was going to be the Casino Tag Team Battle Royal where they enter in groups and then there's a Joker. And unless I missed something on Twitter, which, by the way, Twitter is not where you do your major advertising, as much as people like to believe that. Maybe tell me on a show something that isn't a tweet, because it's so easy to miss that. But I thought it was the traditional Casino Battle Royale. Apparently, the Casino Tag Team Royale is different than the Casino Tag Team Battle Royal. Apparently, those are two different things. But essentially, all this was a Tag Team Royal Rumble.
Right. And I guess maybe they might have said it last Dynamite, where they, you know, said now next week goes on and does it, but I don't recall. So
I don't either. But the most important part of this match, other than the fact that Darius Martin returned and actually got a pretty big ovation and made it down to the final guy, the big news is that Red Dragon came down and helped the Young Bucks eliminate the FTR, and FTR was not happy. So Red Dragon made good on their backstabbing last week.
Yes, they've evened it out for now.
Absolutely. The next thing that we saw was Chris Jericho backstage, and he did a little promo about Eddie Kingston, took a couple jabs at him, didn't say anything that we didn't know already. However, the end, Santana and Ortiz came up and gave him a little fist bump, and Jericho just said, "Are we good?" But they didn't answer him.
They nodded. I think Ortiz like nodded for they're all right for now.
They're all right for now. So apparently Santana and Ortiz, after 2 attempts to win their way into a title match, have maybe realized it might not be Jericho's fault after all.
Yeah. Yes, like we talked about this, like, you know, time and time again, where it's like, what, like, you can't blame Jericho for not doing this.
No. And I think that in the end, I think it's not going to matter whether it actually has anything to do with Jericho or not, because I now think Jericho is turning on every single member of the Inner Circle except Jake Hager.
I know, and that's fine.
I'm fine with it.
Yes, I am too.
And after that, it was followed up by easily the highlight of the show for me, CM Punk promo.
Yeah, that was wow. That definitely had its peaks and valleys for sure.
Oh yeah, that was nuts. I mean, those two guys are so good at what they do that even though I know there were people who didn't want MJF to go back on his story, he didn't necessarily do that. You know, he did. So eventually the segment was CM Punk came out and essentially was trying to apologize to Max and was coming face to face with the result of him leaving wrestling all those years ago. And he had said that when he looks himself in the mirror today, he asks himself, am I the good guy? And tells MJF, he says, I'm trying to be. and he goes to extend the handshake to MJF that he had snubbed all those weeks ago. And MJF just stares at him for a second and gives him this big, awkward hug.
But he was not expecting it.
No, CM Punk was very taken back by this. But that was all a setup, obviously, so that MJF could step back and kick CM Punk right in the balls, beat the shit out of him, hit him with the diamond ring,
destroyed his head. That was a huge gash.
I don't know that CM Punk meant to bleed that much, but something tells me he's not upset about it either.
No, but you saw the bump, the knot on his head, plus the open wound. That was a little rough.
Oh yeah, he definitely ate one. He ate one there. And after that, the Pinnacle ran interference on all of the security guys so that they couldn't stop it. And Shawn Spears basically wrapped the dog collar around CM Punk's throat and essentially hung the guy. And I think that the coolest part about the promo, and not everyone would have picked this up, but the MJF wording, he had said, "You stupid old man, I'm a snake. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people that he wasn't real." And that is the exact line that CM Punk used in 2005 when he was preparing to go to WWE and everybody thought he was going to lose the Ring of Honor championship and just go away. And instead, he won, stayed for 3 more months, and ended up turning on all the crowd and claimed that he was never actually a good guy. He just liked pulling the audience's strings and making them feel how he wanted, but that he was the devil and that the greatest trick he ever pulled was allowing no one to realize that he was real. And that's exactly what MJF told Punk. And I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. So that's definitely a nice touch.
It was pretty cool. Moving forward, your Keith Lee backstage promo, which was classic as always.
I just like when Ricky tries to make fun of Keith Lee's voice.
He did it right off the bat. Keith Lee shut that shit down. After that was the Thunder Rosa and Mercedes Martinez versus Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. And it was kind of a sloppy match. It wasn't bad, but it was just sloppier than I expected. And the real big news is that Thunder Rosa pinned the champion in this match.
Yes.
Which makes me believe that she's not winning at the pay-per-view, which I think is what they want me to think. However, I'm worried. I don't think Britt Baker should win again.
Yeah, it's a weird predicament.
I think it's time for Thunder Rosa.
I mean, she climbed her way back from losing in the semifinal of the TBS championship.
I just feel like it's hard to believe that that's going to end in a loss.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That is a strange instance that we witnessed for sure.
Skipping ahead, after some promos that, TBS championship promo, Chris Statlander, Layla Hirsch hype video, they're going to wrestle on the buy-in.
Yes. So I was going to say, Layla Hirsch is the good person in this one.
Yep. Apparently she is.
That's all I want to say. I'm team Layla Hirsch.
And you're right. So am I at this point. Next was Wardlow and Cesar Bononi. And Cesar Bononi is a big
He's a
guy.
massive human being.
And Wardlow powerbombed him 3 times in a row and beat him.
Gave him the symphony.
And after the match, he stopped Shawn Spears from smashing him with the chair, which that was a very awkward and heated confrontation, and I loved every second of it.
And then he went to, don't want to get too far out of myself, but he reported back to the big man after that incident.
Yeah, he did. Then there was a House of Black video. Those guys are creepy.
Buddy Matthews got in on it.
Yeah, he got to talk a little bit. That's cool. And then we went to the heated confrontation backstage. MJF, Wardlow, and Shawn Spears are all backstage. MJF is clearly very pleased with himself after what he pulled on CM Punk out there in the ring. And he was so happy that he even told Wardlow if he wins the TNT championship after the ladder match, he'll let him keep it. He won't make him give the title to MJF. And Wardlow protested and basically said, MJF said, "Not that I have to worry about you winning anyway." which is total asshole comment. And Wardlow finally spoke up after all these weeks, after over a year. He speaks up and says, "That's because I've been too busy making sure you keep winning." And MJF slapped him in the face so hard, threatened to fire him and put his family on the street.
And he also says that he works for him and not AEW.
Which is totally going to lead to Wardlow disbanding from Max. And then we'll get the Wardlow is all elite graphic, even though he's been on the show for 3 years.
He gets the tweet.
Finally, we had the main event. 6-man tag, Adam Cole and Red Dragon, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish versus Hangman and Dark Order's John Silver and Alex Reynolds. And this was everything that you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome match between two great teams. They need a trios title.
They're definitely going to have one here soon.
The word is that when Kenny Omega is healthy, there will be a trios tournament to crown the first trios tag team champions, which will be great.
Well, Kenny Omega is the difference maker, so.
He sure is. And this kind of went as expected. You had the Thunder Rosa tag match where Thunder Rosa pinned the champion ahead of the pay-per-view. And then this was the opposite. This was what you do to build a guy challenging.
The correct way.
Yes. And Adam Cole, the ring got cleared. Reynolds had been tagged in, but before he could do anything, he was super kicked, given the boom, and Adam Cole picked up the victory.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that as to how it affects the pay-per-view?
I still think Hangman's going to win, actually. I mean, I predicted Adam Cole, but I'm still kind of leaning on the fence that Hangman wins because the beatdown after.
The beatdown after, it was quite a beatdown. They all destroyed Alex Reynolds. Page eventually did try and fight people off, and he set up for the buckshot on Cole, but Fish kicked Hangman's Page's legs out from underneath him, and then that gave Adam Cole the opening to basically tie Hangman to the ropes using duct tape, and then Red Dragon and Adam Cole forced Hangman to watch them beat up his friends, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely a nice touch. Like I said, I'm going to go with my pick of Adam Cole winning it because I don't want to back out of that one because I already made it. No, I can't. But but yeah, it's always kind of those beatdowns after where it's like, the bad guy getting the upper hand. You're like, I don't know. But my thing is like, there's still like a part of me where thinks Red Dragon might come in and interfere enough before the Young Bucks get there to help Hangman.
We'll see. It's possible. I just think that they've got to hold off blatant interference from the Bucks until Kenny is closer to coming back.
Right. That totally makes sense.
But yeah, to end the show, Cole was getting in Hangman's face. Hangman, I think, headbutted him. And so Cole backed up, super kicked him, laid the belt over his shoulder, and that's how we went off the air. Overall, it was a phenomenal show. We could talk about it for days if we needed to, but bigger fish to fry this week with this Revolution show.
100%.
But before we get to Revolution, we are going to talk a little bit of Rampage. So we'll shift over to Rampage and we'll give you the quick hits from there. All right. Well, it's time to move on to the Rampage show, the last show before Revolution. Fish, overall, before we jump in, what did you think of the show?
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I keep saying Rampage is my favorite show. I mean, it's super consistent. It was nice that like nothing major happened kind of before the pay-per-view. So it kind of kept it pretty low key. And I think it was, enjoyable to watch because, like, I'd say it's a filler, but it's like, good to show to watch, but you're not missing anything if you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, stuff doesn't need to happen all the time. They did some things for the promotion of the pay-per-view and everything, and that's all well and good. But I'd say it was a pretty low-key episode where after we got through the opener, which we'll talk about in a second, after the opener, it was kind of like there was nothing bad, but there was also nothing that was like, oh my God, look at this. Yeah. So we'll get into that as we go, but we can start there. What did you think of that first match? That was the first match being Sammy Guevara versus Andrade El Idolo versus Darby Allin in a triple threat for the TNT Championship.
I mean, I just like, I don't even know like how to like explain some of the stuff they did. Like it was truly like mind blowing just how well all three of them worked well together in that match.
So this match was amazing, and I don't want to take away from that. So we'll get my one gripe out of the way before we go into how amazing it was. The wording was that everyone was barred from ringside for this match to ensure no interference. And apparently there were fines of up to $25,000, I'm reading, to anyone who interfered. Why aren't those the rules all the time? Instead, those are the rules for a match that technically there are no disqualifications in. That's the match that you put rules in for. But like, I have to sit here and wonder if there will be interference in title matches tonight. Shouldn't there be fines every single time? Couldn't you use that to make storylines better? Somebody interferes, is fined $25,000, but it's a fine they're willing to pay because of the result that they got. Like, there's all kinds of things you can do. Like, the absence of all rules is actually worse than having too many rules. If there's too many rules, you can be creative and work around things, and inherently it creates stories by itself. If there are just no rules, anybody can innovate anything. And if anybody can innovate anything, then is anything really being innovated?
Leave a comment down below if you're picking up what Matt Gould is putting down.
I'm not even sure that I'm picking up what I'm putting down. So if you can explain it, that would be even better. But that's my only gripe.
And I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that assessment that, you know, it's ridiculous. There definitely should be fines. Like, I know, like, maybe, you know, higher stake matches have higher stake fines. You know, maybe they're just like a generic match, you know, you get $1,000 fine or something. You know what I'm saying? There's just like, you can always escalate it. But yes, I definitely agree that, you know, like, there's literally no one there because they didn't want to pay the quote unquote fine.
Yeah. And that should just be the rules all the time.
Yes. I definitely agree.
Because then it makes up too for the fact that there isn't no instant replay. Like, if somebody doesn't get caught interfering, they're not going to go back, review it, and say, oh, unless you're MJF, they're not going to go back and say, oh, actually restart, unless you're MJF. Then they're going to do it all the time. But at least after the fact, you can go back and say, dude, everybody saw this. Like, here's your fine, or you're suspended for 3 weeks. And then in the 3 weeks, that same guy loses because he's got nobody watching his back. Like, simple things like that, I just hope become more established over time.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, definitely can create, you know, better storylines, especially with, you know, with all the factions and stuff. And like you said, people willing to pay these fines.
Yeah.
You know,
it would be better.
This alliances would be stronger.
But moving on from that, not worth harping on too much. The general idea of the match is that Darby and Sammy are both furious that this Andrade has been fucking with them and interfering with Darby's opportunity, and also all of the stuff with Mr. Sting being Andrade and Jose being disrespectful towards both Sting and Darby. So it was kind of funny because you could clearly see that Andrade was going to be protected a lot in this match because it was going to take two dudes with a grudge to beat him and prevent him from winning the title. So that was the theme of the match. 100 miles an hour worth of action with Darby and Sammy teaming up on Andrade at any point in time that it was convenient to do so. And Andrade, keep in mind, the heel in the situation, having to fight from underneath against the odds to try and have a chance at winning the title. But that being said, it was great. I mean, there was all kinds of crazy moves. Andrade took a code red up high on his shoulders. That was brutal. He did. You had my personal favorite, the superplex that Sammy was trying to give Darby, that Andrade ended up power bombing both of them. The balance and strength that was required to do that, different world, different level.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
After
I mean, Andrade looks I don't know if he's like his physique or whatever, but he just looks more like physique and physical every single week. Like there, I don't know like what he's doing, but his upper body is just absolutely massive.
Yeah, he's like 75% chest.
Yes. Like his torso, like abs, chest, arms. That's it. That's literally
the finish was really what got me. They went back and forth doing small packages and a rapid fire near fall section between every guy. And then there was the deadlift where Andrade rolled through Guevara and one arm deadlift power bombed him.
Yes, that was
still couldn't
wild.
get the win. Also, the Darby Allin had Andrade hung up in the corner and saw Sammy on the top. So he sprints after Sammy to knock him down. Sammy hits a coast to coast, just all kinds of crazy stuff. In the end, Allin hit the flip over stunner on Andrade. And then he went and then was immediately hit by a GTH. And Allin went to throw Sammy out of the ring and then went for the coffin drop. But before he could do that, Sammy came off the top with a senton to break up the pin, threw Darby out of the ring, and then hit the pinfall for the win. I don't have notes in front of me, so that was kind of my like loose recollection of that. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I do remember that Sammy came out with the senton and then hit the pin on Andrade.
And at the end of the match, Sammy was so upset that he wouldn't shake Darby's hand.
Darby was so upset that he wouldn't shake.
Yeah, I said that backwards.
Yes.
My bad.
Yeah, I mean it's very, and like I don't know if they're trying to make that into like more of a storyline, but I think realistically it is justifiable that you lost the championship belt. Like why do you want to shake someone's hand that you just lost it to?
Exactly. Sammy's kind of a prick for that.
And this gets me every week, and we haven't really touched on it like a lot, but I think the reason why I found out why like Sammy like and his championship reign isn't working for me is because he's still holding on to two stupid belts.
Yeah, I still don't understand that.
Get him out of here.
Yeah, seriously. Cut down on your cost for luggage.
But yeah, then after that we went into the House of Black promo.
Ah, yes.
With Death Triangle in the middle of the ring.
This was pretty generic. The basic gist of it is Alex Abrahantes, who is now a vampire. He called out the House of Black, said that they were going to take him on 3-on-3. House of Black came out, and Abrahantes pulled the whole, I never said the three people fighting you were already in the ring. And then Eric Redbeard comes down, destroys some security guards, and they announce a pre-show match.
Yeah, and he took out, why am I drawing a blank on his name? The big guy for House of Black. What is his name?
Brody King.
Brody King, yes.
So. After that, did you see the Scorpio Sky Dan Lambert thing backstage?
Yeah, but I kind of don't pay attention to those. So
I just think that in general, Scorpio Sky kind of doesn't sound very convinced of anything that he says during this stuff. He feels like a dude playing a character, and I feel bad for him because I don't think he's where he was when the company started. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, hard to break up, he's, so closely tied to SCU, yep. But then he said he's going to go on a singles run and didn't really do it and just
and instead he joined Ethan Page. Yep.
So I don't know if that's, part of his creative decision, but definitely doesn't look right.
Yeah. And the other announcement was Paige Van Sant apparently will be at the pay-per-view on Sunday to sign her AEW contract, which if that's true and this isn't some kind of storyline, that actually is really cool. I think she's going to do great.
That is big news. After that, we went to the match number 2 with Keith Lee versus JD Drake.
I don't have a ton to say about this. I mean, I like Keith Lee. I like JD Drake. I don't think that the two should have had a 7-minute match, but I know why they had to. Commercial break. And I know that they wanted to feature Keith Lee one more time before heading into the ladder match. But as far as the match goes, I feel like most of it happened during commercial, and the stuff that didn't happen during commercial was only so exciting. So, it was what it was. Keith Lee got to show off his strength and look a little bit stronger heading into the pay-per-view. But other than that,
Correct.
I didn't take anything away from this.
No, just, it was basically set up for the after the match with Ricky Starks and Will Hobbs making their way down to the ring because the Wingmen attacked Keith Lee.
And he destroyed all of them.
Yeah, he threw Peter Avalon out of the ring. But yeah, then like Will Hobbs and Ricky Starks came down to, get their feud going.
But instead,
Orange Cassidy comes out and distracts.
And I loved the commentary because Taz himself was like, I hate this guy. And Jericho, obviously, who had a feud with Orange Cassidy, goes, I hate him too. I love when I'm on the same page as the commentary.
Yes. And I still think
kiss of death, though.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I guess one last thing about that match was Ricky Stark still making fun of Keith Lee's voice is still hilarious.
That's gonna get me every time for a long time.
And then after that, it was the CM Punk promo, I believe, where he was all bloodied up and stuff, cutting the promo how he's gonna basically ruin MJF in the ring.
This was the second best thing on the show. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they literally keep adding layers and layers and layers to this, and you're just like, I don't know how much like they could keep building up, and like somehow they find a way to keep doing it, and it's thoroughly impressive.
Yeah, the blood, the laughing, how intense he is, but it's also like these two guys are they're really good at making themselves the way they are be larger than life personalities, and it really works for me.
Yeah, no, this feud is literally firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely.
After that, it was that backstage promo. I don't know if it was an interview with Tony Schiavone with Jade Cargill and Ty Conti and Anna Jay.
It was something to do. It's well established that Mark Sterling is not a good lawyer.
Yeah, so, was it Jericho said that or Taz?
Yes, I think multiple people agreed. I think it was one of those unanimous type of feelings from the commentary booth. Well, not much to add to this. Ty kicked her in the face, said she's got 48 hours.
I don't think Ty's winning, so.
So hopefully it's at least a good match. I guarantee you that those two will be on after something they can't possibly follow. So God bless them.
Yeah, good luck. That's all we can ask for. Then after that, we had the third match of the night with the Professor's 5-minute challenge. Serena Deeb just
this was my
Layla
least
Gray.
favorite of all of them because it ruined my theory that it was going to take longer and longer every time. It ruined my theory, and so therefore I don't like it.
I wish it had been like a second longer than like the last match.
I mean, even that would have been better. It totally doesn't matter. I love Serena Deeb. I'm just salty about my idea being killed.
Tony Schiavone was backstage with Eddie Kingston.
He refused to do a promo.
Yeah,
because what's a promo? But
yeah,
the one line that I took away from this that stuck with me because it's really the wrestling I enjoy. He said, "Kayfabe might be dead, but let's not piss on its grave." And yeah, exactly. Good on you, Eddie. That's a fantastic point. And then told Schiavone, let's go get some pie.
And then they did, I assume.
And then I would assume. Yeah.
But yeah, after that, we went into Mark Henry's interviews of Christian Cage and Ethan Page.
I will say, this is where I started to tune out because I had absolutely zero faith that Ethan Page was going to end up winning this match. And, if he's against the right guy, I can really get into his match for the drama of everything. But both guys were good. The interviews before the match were fine. It was just another one of those situations where there's so much good stuff. It was kind of like, oh, this is the last thing we get to see before the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's almost like that. I mean, obviously you start out hot with that match, with the three-way, and it's hard to keep following that up. But yes, I understand that point of view where it's like, really, like Christian Cage and Ethan Page are main eventing Rampage.
Yes. And this is where my attention started to drift because I had some other things going on. I was trying to get ready for work in the morning. So this was kind of the part where I zoned out because I don't know. I wasn't necessarily that interested in who the last person in the ladder match is going to be, because I don't think whoever wins this match, neither of them, in my opinion, are going to be the ones winning the ladder match. So
No,
I was just
absolutely
a little
not.
out of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to get behind something where it's like you can tell none of those two are going to win even the ladder match, like you said. So it's definitely hard to get in the right mindset to watch the match.
Yep. And that brings us to the conclusion of the match, or after the match, I should say, where Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus came out to celebrate with Christian. The Young Bucks and Red Dragon came out, and I think Matt Jackson grabbed a title and Kyle O'Reilly grabbed a title. And Kyle O'Reilly was doing his air guitar, which he used to do with the NXT title during his entrance. So yeah, they did that. Luchasaurus took umbrage to that. He grabbed both titles while they weren't paying attention. Jungle Boy did a flip dive, killed all the guys on the floor, and that was pretty much how the show went off the air. I thought that the last little bit of the segment was good. Honestly, by the time I got to the main event, I was so ready for Revolution that nothing even was mattering that was happening.
Yeah, right. I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. But what did you think of that little ending?
I thought it was a good ending because it definitely showed, I feel like that was the preview of the match, how it's going to go.
Yeah. You're 100% right. I really liked it for that reason.
Because it's definitely going to be Young Bucks and Red Dragon destroying Jurassic Express.
Yeah.
And then they're just going to destroy each other. And Jurassic Express is going to find the weakest link, basically, and go after them.
Yep. I think it's a beautiful storytelling, so to speak.
Yeah. So I definitely thought that was very good, where it's just like, it definitely set the match up.
It did. And it was a decent go-home show. I mean, there was nothing they could have done that was going to get me any more interested than I already am. So there's that aspect of it. But it was a nice little show. Any final thoughts on it?
No, I mean, like I said, Rampage is my favorite show so far. It's been consistent. Like I said, this was kind of a low-key one, and there's nothing wrong with a low-key match before like a pay-per-view or something, because that Dynamite's supposed to be the big one. So this is just kind of a placeholder. So like,
well,
your expectation,
they don't. You're right. Dynamite is the big one, but if you ask any of them, there is no A show and there is no B show.
Right.
And so if people feel that way, then they probably need to, go back to making the Rampage as good as it was a couple weeks back when it was on a really hot streak.
Right. Correct. But I mean, it definitely helps having like I like the TNT Championship belt on Rampage, nice, because it is on TNT. So
there we go.
Whenever that happens, yeah, that's what I like. I mean, it makes sense to me. So,
but speaking of Revolution, that is the next thing we'll get into. So, hope everyone enjoyed the show, and we're going to break it down. All right, it is time for the main course. We're going to do a little bit of an AEW Revolution review. And to do that, we're bringing in the big guns, executive wrestling correspondent for the Gould-Fish Pod, Big Dave, my father, Dave Gould. Welcome to the review of AEW Revolution.
I should get business cards with that. That sounds really, really fantastic. I could probably get into any media scrum with that title. So
yeah, as long as nobody looks up our accounts or anything to verify what the relevance of us is, you could easily get in.
Yes, there you go.
But a year from now, that'll be good enough to get you into anything.
Absolutely.
No matter what.
Hey, we've already wore the media passes.
True.
on representing another site.
And that one didn't deserve it either. So we would be right on par.
we would absolutely.
So anyway, there was a pay-per-view last night, which by the time you hear this, it'll probably be 2 nights ago, based on the amount of talking I'm probably going to have to weed through. But it was an incredible show. Before we really go into all things as a whole, what did you guys think of the show as a whole? Fish, start with you.
Had everything I wanted. I mean, had excitement wrestling, big time moves, a lot of fast pace, but then also a lot of brawling and, kind of beatdowns and intense moments. And I think that's what, embodies a pay-per-view, is literally having the big spectrum of variety. So there's a lot of parity with the wrestling, and I really enjoyed it.
Father?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I wrote down the word variety here. I mean, this is a classic AEW pay-per-view in the sense that, Tony Khan from day one has always kind of said, we're going to give something for everybody, every wrestling fan. There's something on our shows for you. And it was like midway through, I was like, that's exactly what this is. Once again, he has delivered the full buffet of wrestling for fans. And I don't know how you couldn't walk away loving that show. It was really fantastic from start to finish.
It was probably, I can't even appropriately rate it. I don't know if this was my favorite show they've ever done, or if the All Out show that we were at live was my favorite show that they've ever done pay-per-view wise. But it's hard to even rank one above the other, because one I had to watch on a TV, and the other I was there for live and pretty prime seating. So to be a part of the crowd for All Out probably makes me a little biased, but not a bad 1A, 1B show for sure, if we're ranking top pay-per-views by AEW.
I replied one of the Sirius XM Fight Nation shows, the one with Ryan McKinnell and Misha Tate in the afternoon. Shout out to Misha Tate, who retweeted or liked my tweet that I sent in. But they asked, was that AEW's best pay-per-view, of all time? And my response was no. I did say All Out 2021 was I thought slightly better. Again, maybe because I was there, but boy, this wasn't far off. And like you said, 1A, 1B, man, it was right there in terms of best pay-per-view of all time for these guys.
So are you guys really going to make me be the one to say it then? Or what?
I guess so.
It's all you.
Too fucking long, especially for a Sunday. And I get it that it's almost 5 hours of nonstop killer matches, but there were a couple matches that just put them on TV. It's there, and we'll get to them throughout the show. It's nothing was bad, but I woke up early this morning, and I'm not gonna lie, how early I have to wake up after a show ends at almost 11 p.m., which, keep in mind, is almost midnight Eastern time. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is just, why can't they do this on Saturday? And Revolution is always going to be that, because it's the one pay-per-view where there's going to be a Sunday show when there's no reason for there to be a Sunday show. There's no football. There's no day off on Monday for the general population. And it was nothing that affected my viewing during. It was more so oh my God, look at how late it is already. And there's still a main event to go. So I don't know. We'll go into those specific times where you could have saved 45 minutes on the show. It's just, I can't help but think about all of the NXT takeovers that barely lasted 2.5 hours that I thought were the greatest shows I've ever seen up until some of the recent ones. So if you're going to make me be the one to say it, I suppose I will. But it was an A+ show. I mean, maybe a 96%, just short of an A+, but it was tremendous. It was also tremendously long.
I totally disagree. I'm 51 years old. I watched 3 matches after the show went off the air. was up first thing in the morning, and I was actually tweeting with or texting back and forth with some people who were like, "Was that AEW show? Is that what you're talking about?" We caught clips of it. I get it. It is a long show, but I think the time becomes less of a factor because you did have so many killer matches back to back that it just peaked, and it was different matches. So my interest stayed peaked. It was an easy long show to watch, but yeah, I did look at the clock, I admit, after and be like, oh yeah, it's 11 o'clock. Yeah, it maybe a half hour shorter would have been.
Fish, thoughts on the length?
Well, I even started with the buy-in, so it definitely was a little bit longer.
I did too.
So I definitely think if they kept that to 30 minutes, it would have been definitely a 100%. But yeah, I mean, when you're going from 6 to 11, it gets to be a little tiring. But I mean, like everyone's been saying, it's great wrestling back to back to back, and it's hard to stop.
And I guess too long isn't even the right way of putting it, but I can name 3 matches that you could have just put on TV, and to me, it actually increases the value of the $49.99 that I paid to watch a pay-per-view. Anything that should have been on TV, technically to me, devalues what I paid for it. So even getting rid of one of those things and making it an 8-match show, I think it just very much changes the equation for me, just in terms of like getting to the end and being like a little bit drained, knowing that the week starts tomorrow. And if this were on a Saturday, I probably wouldn't have even cared, because I would have had the buy-in on in the background. I might not have paid as close attention. I wouldn't have given a care in the world about what was going on the next day because it's a Sunday. But like I had to care about what was going on the next day because I have to go and do work. So I think the more appropriate way to put it is that there are things you could have taken off the show that instantly would have made it a better show. And that part has nothing to do with length.
Good point.
But it can only be so much
The
better.
Saturday is as much as anything. Move it to Saturday, and it's far less.
And this isn't even a point if it's on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt.
But before we jump into the main show, we can go ahead and run down the whole card. Did you make it home in time to see the pre-show?
I have seen all the matches.
Okay.
I made it home in time to see the 6-man, but I did make it a point to watch the other 2 this afternoon.
Okay. So we don't have to go match by match for the pre-show, but let's just go quickly and kind of give our thoughts on what the pre-show was. Fish, what did you well, I actually already know what you thought about the first match, but go ahead and give me your thoughts on the pre-show as a whole.
Great win for Layla Hirsch. That's all I got to say. But the pre-show was good. I mean, I definitely liked getting Hook in there was definitely a fan favorite. QT just great like flopping around on the mat. But overall, I mean, it's definitely like worth watching. I definitely don't like, if you weren't going to watch it, I mean, I wouldn't say it's anything spectacular, but I think everything else was like good throughout the entire buy-in and definitely set the tone for the pay-per-view.
Big Dave?
I would have taken the Hirsch Statlander match. I would have taken the 6-man and the Ty Conti sliding into the main show. I mean, there's your 3 TV matches that I would have just moved off the pay-per-view. The one pre-show match, and I love the 6-man, but the one pre-show match that I absolutely would not have moved, it would have been my feature match, would have been Hook versus QT Marshall. QT is maybe one, I would say he's a top 5 most underrated talent in AEW because he knows his lane and he's so freaking good at it. And let's face it, this is an interesting, this Hook character is interesting because we're literally getting to view a wrestling character and a professional wrestler from his very birth as a wrestler. And to think like 10 years from now, like where Hook is going to be, and we'll be able to say, oh yeah, I remember that Revolution pay-per-view when he beat up QT Marshall. But yeah, I love that. And I think it would have gotten the crowd as much into it and ready to go for the pay-per-view. If you had just built like the entire 30 minutes up to Hook coming out, they would have been in a frenzy. He would have done his thing, and then the pay-per-view would have started. I think you would have accomplished the same thing they did with the 6-man, which was incredible. That was awesome. That was a great match. So
I did see almost all of the pre-show, except I only saw the second half of the Hirsch Statlander match. And I mean, at this point, the Fairweather Friends, I don't think a single one of them are baby faces. Chris Statlander, not a babyface, straight up told Layla Hirsch that she's not an adoptable child. And I don't understand how somebody can just come from another galaxy and make such bold claims about somebody who's just trying to be a wrestler, man. Like, she's out there trying to live her dream. And this alien supposedly is just absolutely browbeating her at every chance she gets. So I was happy to see Layla Hirsch win that one. And, they tried pretty hard in a lot of the stuff that I saw, and the crowd was hotter than I would have thought it would have been for that. Obviously, the hook stuff was outstanding. I said it was the best simple wrestling match I've ever seen, just based off crowd reactions. And like you said, QT, he knows his lane and he never veers from it. He's got those motion detectors on the side of his windows, man. He stays in his lane and he never leaves.
They're always yellow. They're always
yellow. They're always yellow leave. And they're always beeping. So he knows to just stay straight. But that 6-man was absolutely incredible. Like, I didn't even realize it went 18 minutes because I don't think, other than like a down, a double, triple, a 6-tuplet down, whatever you're going to call it, other than when everybody went down at once, they never stopped moving. And that alone was just absolutely incredible. So, and I'm happy Eric Redbeard got in there, and every time he does wrestle, or the few times that I've seen him, he looks outstanding ever since he departed from WWE. It was nice to see him fit into that team.
Yeah, he was a standout. I mean,
he really was.
You could have easily gotten lost. I mean, that's a big guy to get lost, but you have so much fast moving talent in there. And he was right in the middle. The Brody King, Eric Redbeard at the beginning, where they just ran into one another about 12 times.
Outstanding.
That was so great. That was great.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna, and here's the other thing is I did it to myself because I didn't have to watch the pre-show. And realistically, the only thing I needed to see on the pre-show was a 5-minute hook match and the 6-man. But I insisted on watching the whole thing. And the other thing that we forgot about was the Don Callis promo.
Oh yeah,
right.
Which it wasn't anything major. It was kind of just Don Callis coming out there and browbeating every fan in attendance and coming out to Kenny's music. But if it gives us the indication that Kenny Omega is on his way back soon, and that Don Callis is only behind Adam Cole for the interim,
yeah,
I think that it was a nice little thing to see. I hope when Kenny comes back, we get just as much Don.
Yeah.
I love the booze raining down on Don Callis. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Great. Well, we've got a main show to talk about. Fish, bring us through the beginning here.
What started the show was Chris Jericho versus Eddie Kingston. And scary start, to say the least. But
it was terrifying.
Yeah, it was very, very scary. But man, what a beatdown of a match. Jeez, their chests were on fire.
It could have belonged in the G1. If you'd thrown it in the G1 in New Japan, it would have fit right in. And that's saying a lot considering Jericho's health scare and getting back into shape. And Eddie, obviously Eddie worships some of the ground that some of those former Japanese wrestlers walks on. And you could tell in this match, it was super cool to watch Eddie get that big win over Jericho.
Yeah, no doubt that I was listening a little bit to Denise Salcedo from the Observer on her recap show today that she had live in the afternoon, and she said she was up in the press box and their chests were so red you could see it from the press box of how just beat the hell both of them were. That was a great match. Absolutely fantastic. And then to hear that the first suplex was a planned spot just tells me that Chris Jericho has a death wish. That, to say, yeah, listen, Eddie, just like charge and then just German suplex me right on my head. And I'm going to sell it for the first 5 minutes like my neck is broken. A whole different level of crazy.
And I thought it was great because yes, that was the first spot of the match, but Jericho knows what he needs to do to portray the Jericho character in the appropriate light. and he goes to lock up right out of the chute. Like Eddie isn't going to just try and manhandle him. So Jericho goes to do his lockup and is promptly dumped on his head. And I was so worried about that suplex. But if it was really a planned spot of the match and that was what it was supposed to be, I mean, I'm sure he didn't mean to land squarely on the crown of his head exactly. But if that was the plan, he sold it exactly how everybody should sell landing on their head. And honestly, that first spot set up the entire drama of the match for me.
Yeah, that was a great match.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think my favorite parts was the Jericho code breakers. Those were just hit so precise, and just the excitement and everything with it, like just big move after big move. And then obviously the machine gun chops are always a fan favorite. But
I was gonna say, how is your favorite part not the machine gun chops?
Yeah, those are great. But yeah, I was surprised. I definitely was surprised with the the finish, because I definitely thought Santana Ortiz would be out there as well. So
they made you think that he might.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But yeah, overall it was a brutal but great match.
Yeah, and the finish was not what I expected. I mean, I expected Eddie to win. That's who I picked to win the match. But the fashion in which he submitted Jericho was like, if you were happy that Eddie Kingston was getting a big win over Jericho, then you were made even happier by the fact that he was getting a big time submission win over Jericho.
Yeah, it was big.
And then, of course,
Jericho
awesome. Snubbed Eddie on a handshake that he promised him. So we might get your heel Jericho, Fish. You might get him back.
Yes, I need him. I need it back. But then after that, we roll right into the AEW Tag Team Championship with Jurassic Express, Red Dragon, and the Young Bucks. And that was just a whirlwind of a match. There was just so much going on. It was awesome. And the Young Bucks are just so good at those matches. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, if you had to describe the first match, I would say it resembled an earthquake. And then this was just like a total hurricane or a tornado, where everything was just completely wild. This was more of a tornado match at points than the actual tornado match. I was so, at the beginning, the crowd was super hot for that opening match. And in the time that it took all the guys to come down to do their entrances and stuff, like the crowd had this hush over them. And like for the first 2-3 minutes of the match, I'm kind of like, okay, like we're slow start. Looks like they're going to get some time. And I think the first 5 minutes pretty damn convoluted. Like it took me a second. Like I thought I knew the Red Dragon and Young Buck strategy, but like it took me a second to like know for sure what they were trying to portray. But like once I understood, and that might be a me problem, 5 minutes into the match, like the rest of it, like I can see why the pace was slow for those first 5 minutes, because it set up the final three quarters of the match to make it like off the wall exciting. And the bickering back and forth between Red Dragon and the Bucks, it's one of those things where just because it's not a surprise and you kind of expected them to be having trouble getting along during a match where they're technically competing against each other, like knowing that was the direction didn't ruin it at all for me. It was just as good as I had pictured it being.
Yeah, I think my unsung favorite part of the entire match, and maybe one of my top 5 things in AEW altogether, is the running Bobby Fish commentary throughout the match, that you can completely hear him, and that helped so much when Red Dragon decided, at one point they were like, Bucks were like, all right, tag us in. And Bobby Fish's comment was like, nope, you're coming over here. You're coming this way. Bring him over here. But the fact that he had the dialogue the entire match, you were paying attention to that then. It's like, all right, now what's Bobby going to say? And then when he says that, it's like as if the actions weren't a big enough trigger. You literally have Bobby Fish on camera, on mic saying, okay, like enough is enough. This is, it's our time to kick it in, which it's so subtle. But again, it's like, who else in wrestling? I mean, forget AEW, who else in wrestling is doing that? Just the constant nonstop comments throughout the match. I thought it was great. Classic Young Bucks match. And I'll tell you, they do that 3-team match and the tornado stuff. I mean, unbelievably well. And, you know, that's why they're the best tag team in the game.
Absolutely.
true.
And then Luchasaurus keeps wanting to land on his head too with Canadian
Of all
destroyers.
Of all people. The one guy that probably doesn't need to be landing on his head is the 6'6", 250-pound dinosaur, who probably doesn't need to be landing on his head and neck. That is always terrifying.
He's 63 million years old. It's well fortified.
If Jericho shouldn't be landing on his neck, then neither should someone who's 63 million years old.
Oh man. But yeah, the Jurassic Express came out as champs, and I know me and Matt talked about it for Rampage. You know, the ending of Rampage really set up the whole match, and I definitely thought that was a nice way to go about it. So overall, I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Too focused on beating each other to the punch that the champions retained, which I even told Fish, I was like, well, I don't know how it's going to go. They're kind of making the champions the afterthought of the match, but then you watch them wrestle and it's like, oh yeah, they're no afterthought at all.
No, they were like, they became the main focus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're in every prime spot. Yeah. But then, I mean, after that, we had the face of the ladder, or face of the Revolution ladder match. You had Keith Lee, Orange Cassidy, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Wardlow, and Christian Cage. And wow, I mean, there is just literally just everyone had their moment, and it was awesome to see everyone have their big shot. And I definitely see future feuds with each individual person. So it was definitely great to see Team Taz, my favorites, get out there in action and
come out living.
Come out. Oh, geez. But I mean, everyone had their spot, and I mean that's why I like seeing everyone have like their one big shining spot, and then the rest is just madness.
There was less danger factor. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was Orange Cassidy was thrown almost back through the entrance tunnel, and you had Ricky Starks landing on his neck at the finish, and there was a variety of other things that weren't the safest of but as far as ladder matches go, right away there were people trying to climb that thing and get to that ring, which that's the point. I always have a hard time getting into those matches where everyone just like the first attempt at the ring is 10 minutes into the match. Like, you're telling me there was no opening when all those dudes were like laying outside. So from that perspective, I loved it. It just got a little bit silly at the point where Wardlow was the only person in the ring and had just destroyed everybody. And it's a good thing he won, because he really needed to win after blatantly ignoring his opportunity to win and then being turned on like 30 seconds after trying to team with Powerhouse Hobbs. So it's a good thing he won, but the spots in the match were far more creative than just let's see how far we can fall from without dying. Yeah.
I think in that like my favorite spot may have been when they had the ladder and Orange Cassidy did the pull up flip onto the
that
ladder.
Was incredible.
And that was fantastic. And I will say, I was one of those people who, when I first heard of and saw Orange Cassidy, I did not get him. I was in the Chris Jericho camp. I did not get him or understand him at all. But the spot where you have the three giants and he slides in at the beginning and starts doing his big kicks on the leg, and Keith Lee said, "Mouse, what are you doing?" And he's got his hands up. That was so great. And then he just gets pounded, which should happen every time after he gets a few of the brutal kicks in. But that was that was great. Showing full well that you can have a really good ladder match and not have like two or three guys attempt to kill themselves. It was fantastic. I really liked it. I thought it was really good.
And as far as the finish goes, I think one of the most flying under the radar impressive things that happened was Wardlow doing a standing box jump onto a ladder that is definitely not built to stabilize a 260-pound man doing a box jump. And he landed that perfectly. The ladder didn't even move. And it's not like there was people stabilizing it either. Like, he got up there, performed it like nothing, like nothing. Just easy. And then just killed Ricky Starks, who, you know, everyone says is supposedly fine. That's the backstage report. However, the last time that the backstage report was that he was fine, he ended up having a neck fracture. So we'll maybe have to hold out on a definitive answer as to the health of Ricky Starks. But congratulations to Wardlow, 2 years in the making. He powerbombed the shit out of Ricky Starks on a ladder bridge and was the only man remaining at the top of the ladder. And I predicted incorrectly. I fell into the trap of just thinking they were going to let the surprise win, which is a recurring theme. But I'm glad that that's not what they did, because Wardlow, especially given what happens later in the show, but even without that, he should have won that match. So I'm glad that he did. Guy deserves it.
I agree.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, I don't know if this was just an observation, but this was like the least amount of ladders I did see in a AEW ring for a ladder match. I think there was only like 3, and then Will Hobbs and Wardlow broke the other one. So
that
weren't a lot.
And are we ever going to get like a consistent height at which these things are hung at? Because I swear to God, this was like 10 feet shorter than the last time they did a ladder match. And there were no like super tall ladders either. They were all the same size. They were all like a safe, usable size, but it just felt like they didn't need to climb as high as Cody and Sammy did a couple weeks back.
Oh yeah, no doubt. That one for Cody and Sammy, it seemed like they like literally hung it from the rafter and made them bring.
Insane.
But that's Cody, right? Oh, let's do it. So we need a 20-foot high ladder legitimately to climb all the way up.
And then I'll do an interview and talk about how scared of heights I am after, even though I'm the one who wanted to make it high to begin with. Well, after the ladder match, we had the big Shane Swerve Strickland signing. He came out. Tony Schiavone said that there was a new talent signing, which I don't know if you noticed this, Fish, but my dad and I both noticed that Tony Schiavone was not guarding the piece of paper very carefully. And so
I didn't even notice.
Right away, he like throws his hand up and it just says Shane Strickland on the contract. So if you really were watching it with the intent of like being really excited and glued to the screen, it was spoiled for you before it even happened. So God bless Tony Schiavone. But Swerve comes out. Fans are super into him. They do the Who's House, Swerve's House chant.
Yeah.
And you can kind of just see on Swerve's face, like, all the wrestlers always say, oh, you never know, like the reaction you're going to get. Like, he was just on national television, but the big thing is like, oh, is this audience going to react to me? And you could kind of see on his face holding back a little smile when he told everybody that he loved them. And it was good to see. Me and Fish have talked about all of the indie shows that you and I have seen him on.
Yeah.
He's just grown and grown, much like a lot of these other guys. And this is, I think, is a tremendous pickup for them.
One of my all-time favorite tag teams off the indies of the years that those couple of years that we were going pretty religiously was the Keith Lee, Shane Strickland.
Oh, that was they were a great team. I forgot about that.
And so who knows? Maybe down the road we'll get that pairing. But that's a great signing. Super athletic, a lot of charisma. That's a head scratcher on how, if you were going to cut the rest of Top Dollar from WWE, how you didn't at least keep him. I mean, I think that I hope they have big plans for him here. I think he could be a huge star.
And the match that followed that, or Fish, I'm sorry, any final thoughts or initial thoughts on seeing Swerve for the first time?
I was gonna say he carried himself really well. Like, there's just something, an aura about him. He just really commanded the entire arena, and that little talking that he did. So I was just, I'm excited to see him wrestle.
And I'm pretty sure he comes out to his own entrance music that he produced and raps, which I'm always a fan of that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. which I think is cool.
He used to come out to something else.
It was a groovy tune that he used to come out to.
Yeah, but then I think you're right. I think it is his own stuff. So yeah, that's cool.
Moving forward, we have the TBS championship match, which Jade came down to the ring with a live performance. I don't see the guy's name. Doesn't seem that important, but he was a great guitar player. I'll give him that. The match was fine. Like, I think Jade performed very well for all of the criticisms that I've given her personally about, and it's not even her fault. It's the fault of the guy who decided to make someone champion and then teach them how to wrestle after. And I just haven't been a fan of that, but I'm wrong because she does TV ratings and people seem to like her and she's over with the crowd. But like, this was a 7-minute match, probably 9 or 10 minutes if you include the entrances, because of course we had to have a live music thing in the middle of the show. And I mean, I know it's only like 10 minutes worth of time, but I go from ladder match, Shane Swerve Strickland announcement on a pay-per-view, one that I'm super excited for, into a match that is just fine. And to me, just fine belongs on TV, not something that we paid for. So while it wasn't insulting and it was fine, just give Shane like 2 more minutes to talk. Give me a video pack. I don't know, but the CM Punk and MJF match is what followed. And if we honestly think that we need a buffer match between the ladder match and CM Punk versus MJF, well, then that shows little faith in MJF and CM Punk. If that's really the theory, is let's go ahead and put something not so exciting on so that we can bring the crowd back up. Man, severely underestimating CM Punk and MJF if that's the case. So between the convoluted interference and having to watch Mark Sterling be out there, like, it was just fine. And it was what it was. Nobody expected Ty Conti to win. And all of those things together, for me, personally, don't make a pay-per-view match, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I mean, it's, pay-per-views are kind of, built up to see like maybe a dethroning of a championship. And I think this one was very easy to predict. So, I mean, it was still like you said, it was probably the best Jade's wrestled in a while. I mean, Ty Conti looked good. I mean, but I was going to say there was one part I think that I don't know if it was Anna Jay that hit Jade or with a chair or something, and like the ref was looking like right at her, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, get him out of here.
Yeah, not even an ejection.
Yeah, I mean, to me, to your point, Matt, like, perfect for TV. If she moves ratings, which I know she does, and she's still developing, and Ty Conti's great, but like, it's not like she's a 10-year veteran that can carry her to like this fantastic match. It was the ideal opportunity to defend the TBS championship on TBS or even TNT for that matter. It's not, no one is going, oh my God, I got to buy the pay-per-view because it's going to be Jade Cargill and Ty Conti. They're going to watch her TV segment. So why not like slide that whole match to where you're going to get the most benefit, not only from for your product, but for the wrestlers themselves, because maybe if you want to let them go 7, well, you can go to a commercial and let them go 8 and let them develop a little more. It just seemed like it was I would have rather had a Sammy Guevara TNT title defense, and readjust that than have to see Jade. I think she should be a focus on the TV program, and let her run it up before Paige Van Zandt comes and knocks her out, and that'll be my favorite day of AEW, whatever year that happens.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, not everything's got to be a long-term story. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's get Paige Van Sant in there, and even if she's gonna lose, like, we've already established that you don't need to know how to wrestle before you're pushed to the moon. So I mean,
let's go. I'm all for Paige Van Zandt.
Any final thoughts on this one match for you guys?
No,
I'm good.
Well, what followed next was, I think, the reason that I was most excited for the show, and I would imagine that a lot of people were most excited for the show. It was the MJF CM Punk dog collar match in which CM Punk defeated MJF. It started with the entrances. MJF, such a tool, plays the opening bars to Cult of Personality before his own theme plays, and I just think it's hilarious because MJF tried to pull out every single trick that he had, and in this circumstance, almost none of them worked this time. He had his psychologically douchebag type of entrance style where let me play the baby faces music and I'm gonna come down in my robe and I'm gonna be mean to the crowd and blah blah blah. And it didn't matter because the minute that CM Punk's old Ring of Honor music hit, MJF was visually affected by this. Like, oh my God, like what is going, like, are you kidding me? Like he looked distraught about what he was about to, what he was about to face. Yeah. And the pop for him coming out in his old gear, which is actually the exact gear that he wore in his final Ring of Honor match, recreated to be a little bit more modern. Because I think he was just wearing a pair of basketball shorts back then. At least this one was designed. But I thought that was really cool. Him coming out to the old music was awesome. And then what followed was just an absolute bloodbath between these two guys. And for all of the limitations that having a chain wrapped around your neck will bring, the two told a story in there that was probably, in my opinion, the best story that they've done, the best program capped off by a big time match, maybe with the exception of Hangman and Kenny, but I don't know. I think CM Punk and MJF are so damn good that you can rank this up there and tie it and consider it tied as my favorite long-term program with a satisfying big match finish. Obviously, it wasn't as long as the Kenny Hangman story, but it was along the same lines of effective. And I can't say enough great things about this match. It was everything I want in a dog collar match.
Yeah, it definitely was very impressive showing. I definitely liked how they keep using the dog collar and the chain to their benefits too. I always like it when there's the creativeness when CM Punk wrapped it around the post and was banging a MJF in the turnbuckle where he kept pulling him back in. Yeah, so it's awesome. Like so stuff like that. Like I was just like a nice little touch to keep going. Where it's just like I think some of the other ones we've seen with like the leather strap matches in AEW. There's just like seemed to be too much forgiveness where they were just beat down, and it was nice to they used stuff within the match.
Yeah, I've seen and I found it. It's on the internet. Did either of you guys go back and watch the Roddy Piper, Greg the Hammer Valentine dog collar match from Starrcade 1983?
I did not.
Do yourself a favor. Now that you've seen the modern day version, go back and watch that. And because I was like, all right, I remember this because that's like right when I was starting to be a wrestling fan. And I remember like hearing about it, and I would get wrestling magazines, and I'm like, look, I'm going like, oh my God, this match was like brutal. And Roddy Piper lost part of his ear, and I'm like, how are they gonna like legitimately, like the chain got something around the room, and so it's like, how are they gonna duplicate just the violence and the use of the chain and everything? And man, they like exceeded my expectations, and I had high expectations because I'm like, Punk's. I mean, both of them, they're like geniuses. MJF, for being as young as he is, gets how wrestling works. Punk is amazing, and I just figure that then you throw in that Tony Khan, that sprinkle of Tony Khan, with the historical stuff. I had high expectations, and they completely exceeded my expectations. I thought this was really, really a fantastic match, well paced, slow for a reason. I mean, it's one of those that you wanted, especially once CM Punk hits his gusher, like 3 minutes into the match, and he's like donating pints of blood by the minute. Just to let that go. And you think about like how much he was bleeding at the beginning, and like by the end, the cut had like coagulated. He wasn't bleeding profusely as much as he was at the beginning. And then you just think about like how long they beat the shit out of one another. And even with the use of the thumbtacks, I mean, I thought it was very, it wasn't like, oh, tacks, boom, right down. I loved the tease onto the tacks, that it wasn't just automatic. And then when they did go on it was, there was like, it's like the icing on the cake, right? It's like, okay, I've been hit with a chain, I've been brutalized, I'm bleeding, and it's like, oh, now I got thumbtacks in me, So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
And I think one of the things, like these two guys, in some respects, they're probably too smart for their own good, because they threw stuff into this match that I bet you went over people's heads or people didn't even notice. Like, you've got this brutal brawl of a match going on. And when you've got these guys who are locking in submission holds, the only way for them to get, it's like they're stuck in the hold, there's no way to break. And then they just realize, oh, wait a second. If I roll this guy up for a 2 count, he's going to be forced to let go of this hold. And I know he's not going to keep holding it, because as bad as he wants to beat me, he wants to brutalize me first. And there was, and I think Tony Schiavone was the one that pointed it out. Tony was on his game in this match. He pointed out that the pinfall attempts, the cradles, were the only way to get out of some of these submissions due to the rules of the match. He knew right away what was in the bag when MJF went to go grab the thumbtacks.
That was great.
We've all watched enough wrestling to know what's in that bag, which was outstanding. But as great as everything was, that finish, oh my God. Wardlow or MJF has the upper hand, and he's screaming for Wardlow to come down. And Wardlow comes down and he can't find the ring. He's feeling all over for his pockets and he can't find it. MJF is obviously distracted. He yells, I think MJF's famous last words from this night will be, "You had one job." And as he said that, CM Punk picks him up, hits him with a GTS, which MJF then staggers and flat backs onto the tacks.
That was so great.
The reaction was so good.
Sold that like worse than like the superplex. That was just like as if the GTS wasn't enough. He like flat backs right on the tacks, and it's like, oh yeah, the tacks were there. That was so great. I popped for that.
And of course, it was right after that Wardlow conveniently remembers where he placed the ring. He gives Punk the nod, and Punk with just this big smile on his face as he goes and grabs that ring and puts MJF away after Max spits in his face. CM Punk picks up the victory, and it looks like a title opportunity might be in CM Punk's near future.
Yeah, that was. Did either of you guys see the media scrum with Punk afterwards?
I saw some clips today, but I saw some of him being emotional about some of the stuff, but I never saw anything in full.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch it, and it's like when he starts talking about like the Ring of Honor stuff and it's well worth it. It's like it's one of those things that, aside from the obligatory 2 to 3 shots at the WWE that he takes, usually in any of those settings, it's worth going out of your way for. I mean, it really kind of hammers home how much this dude really loves professional wrestling, and how much that it probably killed him to be away for 7 years, but how much he loves being back now. And I just think this guy's got, some of his better years and some great opponents ahead of him to be able to tell some stories and to do some stuff. So it's worth going out of your way to take a look at.
Fish, final thoughts on the dog collar.
I just love the intensity of the match. It just had layers and layers and layers of just intensity. Even right from the beginning, I just liked how they locked eyes from the start, and you just knew what you were going to get. So I'm glad that I was able to watch it.
Yeah. So now I can't even believe I'm saying this, but up next we've got the AEW Women's World Championship match, and they were absolutely put in the death spot following that dog collar match. I mean, Jesus, I don't know how you follow that, but the way you do follow it is not by the layout of this match. I mean, Jesus, if we really needed to get rid of a match, I honestly think this is the match you get rid of. They were not, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa were not on the same page for a good chunk of this. There was some sloppy wrestling that went on. They were in a spot where it was impossible to follow. They had so much working against them. And then I think Brian Alvarez's joke is that they let Gato from New Japan book this match because there was more interference and visual pinfalls in this match than any Bullet Club match with Evil in it as I can possibly remember. And the reason I say this is the match you get rid of is because I think you do need a buffer match between the Dog Collar and the Moxley Danielson, because you don't want to risk that match having no heat, which, I mean, those guys are as great as they are. It was just, Bryan Danielson said it himself in an interview before the pay-per-view. The matches that he hates following are the emotional ones. And of course, if there isn't a buffer, that's what he has to follow. And so if there needs to be a buffer, you get rid of this match and you throw Jade in this spot, because at least that buffer match is a 7.5 minute buffer match, not a 17.5 minute buffer match, which is what this one was. And it just, I don't know what it is. I haven't seen the same chemistry between Britt and Thunder Rosa since they had their 5-star match where they were hitting each other with weapons and bleeding the whole time. And I mean, maybe that is part of the secret to it, but I really hope that if they are going to do a cage match between these people, that they're able to resummon that magic from their hardcore match, the lights out match, because we've seen them do it before. And it's just like, ever since then, they just haven't gotten on the same page. They've both had great matches like away from one another, but then they come together and it's just, I don't know. Thoughts?
I mean, it definitely was just a lot of interference for sure. And even JR was just saying, what's going on here? And then that's when you know it's getting bad, as if JR is pointing it out. So I definitely did not expect to see all the interference. And I know tweeted it out that said, where was Mercedes Martinez? Like, seriously, where?
It almost bastardizes the fact that Mercedes is the one that went back on her initial word to save Thunder Rosa. It just, all of a sudden that didn't matter at all because apparently Mercedes Martinez couldn't book a flight. I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of the most bipolar feuds, I guess, in the sense that, like, you have Mercedes Martinez, who initially comes to take out Thunder Rosa, doesn't get the job done, then she's her friend. You have Jamie Hayter, who is at her wit's end with Britt Baker, but then, like, right when you think she's on the verge of, like, okay, she's gonna turn on Britt, and she's Britt's friend again. She's helping her win, and she's throwing her the belt, and and you every time these two have locked up, I always have this thought, like, okay, they're gonna get back on track. They're gonna find that magic again. And they haven't been able to do it. I personally, I would have booked it differently. I would have had, it would have been a good idea to have Mercedes Martinez out there backing Thunder Rosa. And she didn't even have to be part of the entrance. I like when the competitors come down and then their seconds just kind of walk out, like Arn Anderson with Cody Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
He does his pomp and circumstance. He starts walking in, and then Arn just kind of makes his way down. You could have had that. But like, this is when I would have pulled the trigger on Jamie Hayter to have her go in with the intent of screwing over Britt Baker, ends up like have Jamie Hayter hit Thunder Rosa with the belt on accident. Britt Baker isn't completely aware of it until later, and then you build to the next match, which now you go cage match. But then it sets up Britt for, all right, she can drop the title now, and her and Jamie Hayter can have a program, and then you got Thunder Rosa as your champion, and you can always circle back around. I just thought it was like, I don't know. I actually, in my own personal star ratings, I think I had this as the lowest rated. I mean, I think because I had a higher level of expectation, and it didn't work for me at all. Tough spot. I get it, but
a lot working against them. But then instead of like
rising to the
making it
challenge,
simple,
yeah,
they did all this stuff. Like following a match like that, you're never going to keep the crowd with lots of interference and stupid heat. Like at this point, same thing with the whole concept of paying your money for the pay-per-view. These people in this arena probably paid even more money than I did to watch it. And following a dog collar match, they're not. People were excited to see Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker. They were not excited to watch the format that this match followed. But Fish, I was actually I'm glad that he had said his idea with the interference thing. Like, what do you think about if the match had gone that way, where Hayter tries to help Thunder Rosa, but because of some change of events, ultimately it doesn't really help at all, and Britt Baker wins anyways? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I thought, Big Dave's ideas, I think, was pretty accurate, honestly. I'd rather see the turn or something happen. I just, with all the distractions going on, and, Thunder Rosa pinned Britt Baker, tapped her out, and it just kept building up to nothing. But at least with Britt Baker could go to Jamie Hayter and, can move on for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I definitely am intrigued with that idea with Jamie Hayter, making the careless mistake,
Yeah. Yep. I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
If it was going to be on, it should have been different. If on in that spot, it could have been a lot different, which would have benefited both of them. So.
And they had such a good build with the Rampage segment where they, kind of airing it out. And it was a disappointment to me, where I definitely had higher expectations. But if you're going to keep referencing their big match, they have to turn it around at some point, because that's all it's going to be, is just we're going to keep referencing their lights out match.
A flash in the pan from 2 years ago or whatever it was.
Have to close the yearbook now and move on.
Yeah, in another gimmick match, right? Throw them in a cage. Let them have. No, they're the first cage match. So make it a little smaller though than the last. I'm sure they'll use the same one if they do go to a cage that Cody was in with. That thing is enormous.
Yeah, maybe not that.
Yeah. We've got three pretty highly anticipated matches, at least in my eyes. Two of the three big ones. Next up, we had Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson, who, the backstory being that Bryan Danielson realized that teaming with Moxley would be better. Moxley cuts that great promo a few weeks ago where brings up their history, brings up the fact that he's never beat, Danielson, and brings up the fact that if he's going to team with somebody, he's got to bleed with them first, which you knew going in, this was going to be hard hitting. You knew it was going to be physical. It was compared to a New Japan Pro Wrestling main event caliber match in terms of the psychology, the story, the physicality of it. This was everything I wanted it to be, and probably more. I thought this was tremendous. The shots that they were laying in on each other were just probably in like, you'd look at like Jericho Kingston, and they were pretty physical. I just believe that these guys were at like the whole next level. Especially with some of the submissions, when these guys have these submission holds locked in, it's like that suspension of disbelief, or that moment of belief where you just sit there and go like, where you love pro wrestling for being pro wrestling, where you're like, oh man, like he's got that locked in tight. And not only because like when Moxley's got like the bulldog choke in, it's not only his facial expressions, but it's Bryan Danielson's as well. Like
his eyes popping out of his head.
Like, oh my God, I'm about to go out. And there's like this desperation. I just think it's two guys that are arguably, the absolute best in the world at professional wrestling, having that caliber of a match. It was great. I absolutely loved it.
Fishy.
I was gonna say I actually thought like they were actually punching and kicking each other as hard as they could. So
yes, right, right, yeah.
Like it looked like John Moxley like might have cracked a rib with some of those kicks. Like I was just like, oh my god.
Oh, those are
some of those
so
sounded
brutal.
bad.
Yes,
Oh.
that's why I'm like, okay, they actually might be like fist fighting right now.
And we always make the jokes, Fish and I, on some of the episodes. We'll make the jokes of like whether or not Eddie Kingston knows that it's real. Well, I don't think Eddie, Jericho, Moxley, Bryan Danielson, or to spoil a little bit, William Regal for that matter, I don't think any of them knew that this shit wasn't real.
No, I agree. They take things to a whole different level in terms of their performance and the athleticism and the contact, and it's just it's a different brand of violence and physicality. And
I was gonna say it made it feel like it was a UFC match, honestly, for me. Like it really did. I mean,
and even like they started to spill outside. Like it was relatively early in the match. They kind of tumbled outside, and I was like, oh man, don't ruin this match by like going through a table or somebody grabs a chair and the referee's got to turn in and look the other way, or in many cases just look right at them breaking rules and do nothing. And it was like they went to the side, and I think they were like forearm exchanges, suplexes. It was like, okay, we're out of the ring, doesn't matter. I'm still gonna kick the shit out of you right here, and then eventually got back in, and then just continued. And it was like I normally like for a match like that where the direction they're going, and could probably do the entire match right inside the ring and never have to leave. I was very pleased with just how they just were like, okay, fine, we're outside, nothing changes. Here's a forearm right to your face. And it was, and then eventually like got back in, where it's those little subtle things. I just think made this, for me, match of the night. This was my favorite match. So.
I think I have to watch a couple matches again to know what my favorite match of the night is. So that'll be on my list. The one spot where they both end up bleeding, the spot that produced blood for both guys. Moxley was it Moxley that did a tope onto Danielson?
Yeah.
Or was it the other way around? Where they just no-sold the tope.
Was doing the tope because I think Moxley caught him and like turned him around and started punching him on the barricade.
That was the spot where after they do that and they're kind of punching back and forth, they both take a step back, rear up and fire and just clock each other right in the head. And that was like no thighs were slapped in the making of that spot. Like that was fist to forehead. And I think both of them still had the blade so that they could get the juice flowing. Yeah. So like, why did you punch each other in the head so fucking hard?
Yeah, right.
But it was creative that they had that spot planned where they'd both bleed at the same time. It was all of this was well done. Yeah. I mean,
and which leads kind of to the perfect ending.
Yeah.
Danielson just refusing to believe that Moxley could have beaten him. They're just like, okay, fine, we're just gonna keep fighting. It's just like F you, we're gonna keep going. They go at it. We're getting the call for all the referees, the security. That's
immediately before they even touched each other.
Like knowing full, like, oh my god, this is not good. And then you just have Lord William Regal or Steven Regal or whatever he's gonna go by. But just not even like run, just striding out, coming from the side of the ramp. Like he wasn't even like
you would be catering watching.
Right. He was just like, it was like he's in the back, just like, all right, enough of this. And like no announcement. The announcers completely popped for him. Tony Schiavone, I thought it was maybe one of Tony Schiavone's best pay-per-view jobs altogether.
He did great.
Because he was like so thrilled. He was excited. He was shocked. I mean, even JR, who, sometimes, you get the biggest surprise and you get JR who like completely undersells it. Like, oh yeah, hey, William Regal, but even he was, Excalibur was, I mean, they were all like, holy shit, like it's what is going to happen? And then when he comes in the ring, slaps both of them like it's like his son's just like, yeah, you guys are out of line. The pseudo headbutt to Moxley. So he's got Mox's blood on his face. And then just looking at him and the reaction to both from both. Like when he slaps Moxley and Danielson just sits there and like laughs at like, you got hit, you got in trouble, and he turns around and slaps him. The look on his face, I absolutely, oh my God, that was, it doesn't get much better for me. That whole match and that segment and the Pete Dunne tweet that followed.
Yeah, that was great too.
Fish, did you see that?
I did see it on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all been there at one time as he's throwing him back. It was just so perfect. I obviously you can tell I loved it. That was a highlight of the night for me.
Fish, the real question for you: does William Regal know that it's not real?
No, he does not.
Okay. We got to make a Twitter account. Does so and so know if it's real?
Yes.
The headbutt for sure got me. I was like, oh my God. He actually just drilled Moxley.
And there are two things about the finish that I think are very interesting to point out. First, the Ring of Honor nods all night. You've got Jericho, whose whole match was based off of a handshake and respect, and then he refuses to give it. You've got these two guys who, as much as they clearly respect each other, they refuse to sell that respect to the other guy. So much so that William Regal had to come down and force them to show each other honor. And then we'll get to it eventually. But in that main event, Hangman voluntarily doing the right thing, even with the dead Adam Cole, goes and he gives him the Ring of Honor handshake. So I thought that it was pretty cool, given the timing of it all, that there was some of those little things trickled in there.
Yeah.
But the finish of that match, I think, is so perfect because you've got Danielson, who won Technical Wrestler of the Year award, and you've got Moxley, who won Brawler of the Year award. And they both displayed in spades why they won that award, only for Danielson to be the one brawling at the end, getting him in a tough submission so that Moxley could show his technical prowess, roll him up and pin him. And I think that's where the anger from Bryan Danielson comes, because he's like, damn it, I'm beating this fucking guy at his own game, and then he ends up turning it on me and I lose. And he was not accepting of that.
No, that was great. That was great. All right, I'm a little exhausted after that one. I gotta be honest with you. That took a lot out of me. I was on the edge of my chair. So moving on, it's like, how do you top that? And you get, literally, if you use Darby Allin's entrance video, you take a bunch of cars and you crash them into one another. And that's what we got really with this 6-man tornado with Darby Allin, Sting, and Sammy Guevara against Andrade El Idolo, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy, along with Mark Quinn, who I didn't even see come down initially, and then all of a sudden he was there. And
Butcher the Blade. It was actually the whole.
Jose
office.
the assistant.
Yeah, Jose. Poor Jose.
Butcher and the Blade show up later. Listen, if you're into, this was probably the only thing that could have effectively bridged Moxley and Danielson and Hangman and Adam Cole, is just to go out there and have a match like this, where there was absolutely no sense other than let's just try and outdo one spot after another. And I thought they almost did too much, and the crowd, it was like they got their second win back, but probably used too much of it in this match. Because I mean, I just have 3 spots that just come to mind. The trash can spot with Jose the assistant at the beginning. Brutal. just put him on the chair, trash can over, and then Darby Allin, who I mean, God bless him, but he just, I mean, he almost killed himself as much as Jose, the assistant, got killed. The Sammy Guevara Spanish fly, the Sammy fly off the top of the stage through the tables with Isaiah Cassidy, which was insane. Especially since they kind of missed the first row of tables and just hit the one, and then
thank God
onto the stage, and thank God they didn't completely overshoot. But then 62-year-old Sting up there from the second balcony doing a frog splash through 5 tables or whatever it was through Andrade. I mean, just amazing. The who was it? The Butcher whipping Darby Allin into the rail on the side like he's a rag doll. You know, and if it wasn't for what many are alleging to be a rib on Darby Allin with the finish, that Matt Hardy intentionally moved further away to make him try and have to jump, it kind of ruined like all of that violence. And then basically a headbutt to the hip ended the match. A flying
headbutt. And in our predictions contest, that bullshit secured your victory.
Yes. I knew Matt Hardy's erratic behavior would somehow secure a victory for me. So, yeah. But it was, I mean, if you're into the big spot car crash match, this was your match. And you know, it's kind of like it's like going back up to the buffet for like a few extra crab legs before getting dessert. You know, so but yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was.
Fish, what did you enjoy?
I mean, I enjoyed all of it. I mean, definitely poor Jose, because Darby just never ceased to sprint into a tope.
They're really baby facing Jose with the beatings he's taken.
Yes, yeah, he took a hit. He went into the steel steps too, and
oh yeah.
It makes you wonder who the real bad guy is here. Fucking Sting and Darby absolutely double teaming and destroying Jose.
Poor Jose.
Yeah, so yeah, Jose took a beating. I mean, it was definitely, like you said, it was big spot after big spot after big spot, and it was definitely awesome for sure. Like, I definitely loved it. I mean, Sammy about killed Isaiah Cassidy. Sting, he doesn't seem to age, I guess.
No.
But yeah, I mean, the one critique I have, and it's still Sammy. He's got to stop wearing 2 belts, man. I don't know what to keep saying at this point. You just stop wearing 2 belts.
Yeah, like I'm intrigued if like one day they're just, the belt is gone, they get a new belt, or like if somebody went like what, somebody just tell them you don't have to wear both of them. It's the exact same belt, Sammy. It's
because Wardlow is going to eventually beat him for the title, and they're going to need 2 belts to wrap it around one of these gigantic fucking men that are competing for this TNT title. So I have a weird analysis of this match, because like all of the individual people, like seeing them do all of their stuff, I really loved, but I was so tired at this point. and I was almost preemptively tired because I knew what the main event was going to be like. And I was just like, okay, I really want to get to the Adam Cole Hangman Page match. And it's like, I'm watching and I'm like, oh man, I love Darby. And then I'm watching and I'm like, oh man, Sting is so crazy. And then I'm watching, oh, poor Jose. And I'm watching, oh man, Sammy's going to do this crazy. But well, like as a match, I was kind of like, damn, I was expecting Andrade to get a fucking win after all of the jobs that he's been doing.
Right? Same here.
And so when I watch all these dudes kill each other, jumping off of balconies and onto entryways and through tables and all this stuff, and Jose lost another tablet, and all this stuff is happening, and all for Darby to pin Matt Hardy. I'm like,
yeah.
And I get it. They want Matt Hardy to start taking losses because it's about a foregone conclusion at this point that Jeff Hardy is going to come. He's going to be in AEW. There's going to be a Hardy Boys team, and their first feud, unfortunately, is probably going to be against somebody from the Hardy family office, probably Private Party. And so I understand why they insisted on having Hardy like lose in this situation. But like Jeff Hardy's going to debut on TV, right? And the idea is that it's going to be like a ratings thing to have Jeff Hardy, right? So we start off the Matt Hardy losing thing, like before Jeff's going to come in on a show that 20% of your total audience is going to see. Like, to me, that just begged for something that should have been the main event of a TV show. As erratic and crazy as it was, I need the most people possible to see this whole Hardy Boys thing. And instead, it was shoehorned into a pay-per-view where like I kind of went into it thinking like, oh, so they did this 3-way TNT title match so that Andrade could pick up a win against Sammy and get maybe a one-on-one. Like, I was convinced that Andrade was going to be the next TNT champion after watching that 3-way, which seems a little counterintuitive, but just based on the way he was protected and how basically 2 guys needed to beat him, I just sat there and I was like, all right, so this is the start of Andrade doing something meaningful. I guess not. Just a man in a stunt match.
No. Yeah, it's just a guy who's going to take a frog splash from Sting through 5 tables.
Yeah, and I'm sure he loved
Just
every
that
second
guy.
of it. But
Yeah.
but yeah, overall fun stuff. But I was like, oh God, can we just get to the end? And then the ending kind of took even more wind out of the sails. But crazy shit, awesome guys, love the guys. Just I was tired.
I was thinking, like, as I was kind of putting like thoughts together, like you could have taken the 6-man from the pre-show and put that in its place here, and taken this car crash and moved it to one of the TV, and moved it to Friday night, and
it was a 13-minute match. It could have been an excellent Rampage main event.
Yeah, and and then and give those other guys, a main card, a little rub. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun, which then takes us to our main event, which was,
before you dive in, can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
I love Adam Cole, and I'm not like a body shame guy. Like, I don't really care what the size of the wrestlers are if they're tremendous wrestlers. But dude, he came out in that Halo gear, and like it made him look like a goddamn Funko Pop. Like the gear, it was just an awkward fit. And I was like, knowing that it was Halo gear and that he's a video game guy, I liked it, but I was like, Jesus, this gear is eating this guy alive. But it was cool. Yeah, no, he did have a good tan though. He did.
I will say it was a great spray
Excellent
tan.
Yeah.
A great spray tan. So you got Hangman Page, and Adam Cole for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, which I think more than lived up to my expectations. I wish there would have been a little less of the shenanigans, so to speak, and it wasn't so much as interference, moving a table in place and what have you, and distractions. But again, I really like the World Championship matches where, like, if you're going to have a second, have a second. I think back to like the Kenny Omega matches in New Japan where the Young Bucks were the second. Yeah, they may have set up a table, but it's like physically never got involved. They never were a reason to like cause a distraction to the match, so to speak. They were there helping him. I felt like you didn't need to have Red Dragon come down in the role that and I really felt like, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with the story, but like, couldn't it have been the Young Bucks that came down to like tell Red Dragon, hey, stay out of? I don't know that having the entire Dark Order was the right move. I was just kind of like, what? Dark Order? But in terms of just going back, I guess, to the match itself, I kind of looked at it and said, like, this was like a classic NXT takeover main event. It's like they were doing each other's moves, small little, like, I loved when he took his belt and attached him to the ropes. Interestingly, got booed when he did that. with some super kicks and then Cole out of nowhere super kicked back. I thought it was very well done. I like those style of matches. And again, you had so many other great matches. It's you hope that your world championship match elevates to get up on that level, and maybe not the top level, but I think Hangman Page is on a pretty, all the people who were wondering what kind of world champion he would be. The guy had another near 5-star match, in my opinion, and delivered on big time on this match. Eventually pinning Adam Cole and more than likely moving on to whatever's next. So I loved it. I thought it was a great main event and a great world title match.
Well, Fish, you go before me.
I was gonna say it's definitely. I think this might have been my favorite too, because I think I just had a lot going into it. Adam Cole has just been, favorite since I watched him on NXT when I was over at your guys' house. And Hangman's just been on a tear lately. So it's just finally seeing kind of Hangman unleashed a little bit. I think this was like kind of perfect timing. I definitely agree with Big Dave in saying the Dark Order didn't make sense, because I didn't understand why they came down when he hasn't been with them, besides that trios match on Rampage or Dynamite, which one it was. So I didn't understand them being there. But overall, it was definitely a kind of wrestling tennis where a lot of back and forth. Definitely a lot of super kicks, which was awesome. But
if you Adam didn't Cole already have enough.
Yeah, Adam Cole hitting the super kick while Hangman was doing the moonsault or whatever was
a staple.
Incredible.
Oh, yes. That was great. That was great. That was perfectly. I've seen so many guys try and do that, and it's a little off. That was absolutely dead on perfect.
That was money. But yeah, just overall, I was like, even that little, tying him to the top rope. Just those little things. I definitely thought it was just meant that much more too. So.
Well, here, let me allow the Dark Order thing to make sense for a second, because I have a way. Okay. I was not as much of a fan as Hangman Page being tied, or Hangman Page tying Adam Cole to the ropes with his belt. For the same reason that I wasn't a fan of Anna Jay trying to use a chair in front of the referee. That was too good of a world title match for there to be blatant rule breaking and nobody doing anything to stop it. The guys, they're and I understand that they're capping off like a story, because Adam Cole did that to Hangman, and so I understand, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume that everyone was booing because they didn't need mindless rules being broken in the middle of a fucking tremendous match. But let's make it all make sense. And this is, the absence of rules to me does not provide more creativity. It's less creativity, because you can do anything and anybody can think of anything. True creativity is figuring out a way to get all that stuff to happen and have it make sense. That's creativity. And this is how it happens. Red Dragon comes down before they've even had an opportunity to do anything. 2 Dark Order members run down. You don't need all of them. Send 2 of them down. Silver and Reynolds, who are Hangman's most frequent partner when they are actually involved in storylines.
Yes.
And have those 2 dudes chase Red Dragon off immediately before they can even impact anything. And in the process, that's when the ref needs to take a bump. And that's when Hangman looks down, realizes that Adam Cole is up against the ropes and groggy. Now he's got his belt. Now you tie the guy to the ropes. Do your super kick sequence. Adam Cole eventually gets out. And by the time he gets out, now the ref has regained his composure after trying to get rid of all of the people interfering and taking a bump for it. Now there's no rules being broken. You don't need every single member of the Dark Order being down there. We've already established that they never throw it to the booth replay in New York, so they're not going to review Hangman Page tying this guy to the ropes. But at least in the process of it, it's just not just mindless things happening in a world title match because, we better get Red Dragon out there and it'll be real cute if the entire Dark Order chases after him. And then, even though we've had our opportunity to create a couple outs, we're going to just cheat blatantly anyway. and turn the fans on the poor Hangman. But there was ways to make that make sense. And I've talked way too long about it because that match was outstanding. I mean, these two guys, that's almost why it stands out to me. It's just because guys that are that talented don't need it. They don't need it. And there was so much acrobatics that, Hangman went above and beyond in this match. He's turned into Hangman the Brawler over time. And then when he does bust out some of this old stuff that was like a staple of his offense back when he was in Ring of Honor and New Japan, now it's like, holy shit, look at the Hangman and all that stuff. And Dad, better than anybody else. All of that stuff was like, it happened in every Hangman match all the time because he's trying to get over, understandably so. But now he just knows where to place all of that stuff, when the appropriate time to do the bigger things are. And there's no better guy to foil a big move than Adam Cole.
Yeah.
He can just super kick you out of midair. Boom, you're done. The anti-air. And the book is closed. But I thought that the crowd, the way they were into it, there were people who were like, oh, well, the crowd, they're just entertaining themselves with the Adam chants. I didn't think that. I think people are underestimating that this crowd, a lot of them, even though they know Cole is a heel, they don't want to boo Adam Cole. Nobody has ever wanted to boo Adam Cole. He's been a heel for years and he garners boos here and there, but no one wants to boo him. And so I interpreted the let's go Adam and Adam shit and Adam's going to kill you. Like, I interpreted all that stuff as like, this is like, they're just being efficient with their chants and the early going. And then as the match broke down, you had your definite Cole supporters, your definite Hangman supporters. And like you said, Fish, it turned into the back and forth epic world title match that you expect to get out of those guys. And sure, minus a couple bit of the convoluted spots, you take out some of the convoluted things with the interference and everything, and maybe it is a 5-star match. Who knows? But it was damn near close to 5 as it is, even with that stuff. And you're never going to get me disappointed when watching an Adam Cole main event or a Hangman main event. And now you put them against each other. I mean, anyone who questioned whether that should have gone on last and been the headline of the pay-per-view, it's crazy. It should have absolutely been in the exact spot it was.
Yep, I agree. And just one last note on the Dark Order involvement and everything. You almost had to watch BTE on Mondays to understand it, because you have Silver and Reynolds who have been chummy with Adam Cole, trying to recruit him to the Dark Order, and you got a side little thing there, even to the point where Hangman, I think it might have been even on a BT episode, is like, do you have my back? Are you with me? So, okay, well, now that makes a little more sense. But the one thing is when the Hangman kind of came to and turned around, he pushed Alex Reynolds into, and on today's episode of BTE, they made a big deal about that, to a point where Alex Reynolds was pissed and he walked out of the room when Hangman came in to, apologize for everything. But it's like, you can't tell a story on a YouTube show that is on Monday that you don't ever reference on your TV. You can't. It's like selling a book with like a separate chapter off to the side. Like, all right, yeah, here, read this book and that'll get you 90% of the information, but 10% is going to be in this separate book that some of you will read and understand and some of you will never even look at. I don't know. I think they're, especially because it's your world champion and it's your main event, you can't dilute it with your YouTube internet show.
Yeah. I think that's the fairest point of all of it.
Yeah. I think the unfortunate thing is if you don't have that, or even if it's Red Dragon and the Young Bucks, and they don't even have to get physical. It's just, Red Dragon could think about interfering, and then the Young Bucks come down with what are you doing? Like, stay out of the business, and then you create this, because they did something on BT again where, because of how Hangman's ring jacket was with all the tassels, the guy was like, hey, Young Bucks, you don't forget your gear. And they're like, oh no, we made that for Hangman. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, like you're helping Hangman, like, get his gear done. Like, but you think JR is going to reference anything? I don't think JR knows of being the elite. I don't think he even knows it's on, and, but it's your world champion and it's your world championship match. And it needs to be a lot cleaner storyline wise, because the wrestling in the ring is fucking outstanding.
Yeah.
Don't convolute it. Let them be wrestlers.
Exactly. It's like they're the only ones that don't know that they don't need that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But overall, I mean, closing thoughts. This was as epic of there was all kinds of intricate spots in that match. We could talk about it for 5 hours. We could talk about it for longer than the pay-per-view went on if we really needed to. But my closing thoughts on this are: this is a top 3 for sure AEW pay-per-view. Maybe a top 4. I'd have to go back and look. But certainly up there and worth every penny that I paid, even for the stuff that I didn't even want. Worth every penny. Definitely. Right. And they've established that being a routine here is that, and with the Double or Nothing show already having sold all those tickets, it's very clear to me that they're doing these pay-per-views right. And I've enjoyed every one of them. There's been no duds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives me everything I want to watch. And, I feel rewarded for watching Dynamite and Rampage. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing is that you are rewarding people who watch weekly.
It's the most important part, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a great show. Well worth it. One of the, I'd have to go back, put some thought, but I think I'm with you. It's definitely a top 3 for, it could even be number 2 behind All Out from this last year. So, but great show and great reviewing it with you guys. Thanks for having me on the pod.
And we will wrap it up here. I can't let us leave without giving the final standings of our predictions contest.
Okay, here we go.
Fish, you went out of your way to make more than a few bold predictions, and I absolutely respect you for it. But it netted you You did.
Yeah, I went for it.
But it netted you a 4 for 9 outing. You were holding strong too up until the midpoint of the show.
I was hanging in there.
It was anyone's game until it wasn't, I came in second. I was 6 for 9. And Big Dave, after what I tweeted was that Big Dave locks up the prediction contest, all because Matt Hardy couldn't kick out of a move that didn't even hit him. And he also predicted the main event correctly to go 7 for 9 on the main show, which with some of these AEW pay-per-views is pretty impressive because you don't always know what's going to happen.
Well, thanks.
As evidenced by Fish's predictions.
I accept the award-winning picks for this pay-per-view, and we'll get after it next time.
Absolutely.
You have to defend it. Defend it to Double or Nothing.
Yes.
I will be defending at Double or Nothing.
Well, it was an epic show, and this is going to be another mega pay-per-view episode. I already can't wait to go through and edit and listen to some of this back while watching some of the old matches. So I'm going to get to that. For Matt Gould, I'm Matt Gould.
I'm Ryan Fish.
Big Dave, executive correspondent and pay-per-view pick winner.
Yes. For both of these gentlemen, we bid you adieu, and we will catch you next time.